Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. We're still some weeks away from the next big content patch for Hearthstone Mercenaries, so I figured this would be a nice time to think a little bit about where have we been with Hearthstone Mercenaries and where we might be headed next. As for the bounties, Hearthstone Mercenaries launched with 4 zones. We had Barrens, Fellwood, Winterspring and Blackrock Mountain, and in some ways this zone order and these zones mimicked the vanilla World of Warcraft leveling experience. If you're a Horde player, well, Barrens is the first real zone that you go into after the introductory zone. Then we're skipping some zones and we're entering into neutral zones that both Horde and Alliance players went to. Fellwood, Winterspring, Blackrock Mountain, you could actually do them in pretty much that order as well. And as for the individual bounties within these zones, well, Barrens, Fellwood, Winterspring, leveling zones, Blackrock Mountain, more of an endgame zone, and it did also have stuff from Blackrock Depths, it had stuff from Molten Core, it had stuff from Blackwing Lair, so also the endgame dungeons and endgame raids of vanilla World of Warcraft were represented in these. And this was what Mercenaries launched with, but then Mercenaries started to also go into the direction that current Hearthstone expansions are going. Because the next 4 zones that we got followed the Hearthstone expansions of the time. We had Alterac Valley. In World of Warcraft, Alterac Valley was the PvP place in the vanilla World of Warcraft, the biggest battleground. Then we had Onyxia's Lair. Onyxia's Lair also was an endgame raid in vanilla World of Warcraft, so we're still in that vanilla realm. And then we moved over to Battle for Azeroth, one of the more recent World of Warcraft expansions. Darkshore only played a little bit of prologue for Battle for Azeroth. It was also a low-level leveling zone back in vanilla World of Warcraft, but that's not the Darkshore that we're in right now. And then Sunken City, also Battle for Azeroth themes, coinciding with Voyage to the Sunken City, which was also based on that World of Warcraft expansion. But where can we go from here? There are actually multiple World of Warcraft expansions that we have not yet visited, so there would be quite a few places we could go. Also, it might be important to note that there was supposed to be a couple of more bounties in Darkshore and Sunken City that were actually never released to the game, with Priscilla Ashvane and Warlord Regis, both supposed to be appearing but neither did. Priscilla Ashvane played a fairly major part in Battle for Azeroth storyline. That would kind of tie us to Battle for Azeroth again, but we already visited that. Warlord Regis, as far as I know, this is completely new character, only for Hearthstone, so this doesn't have any real connection to World of Warcraft apart from actually being Naga, and Naga are pretty much just everywhere. So these bounties, of course, they could return, or maybe they were just scrapped ideas. It's hard to say. If they were to return, we could go explore the Battle for Azeroth expansion in more detail. The Battle for Azeroth expansion mainly took place in the island nation of Kultiras, and Priscilla Ashvane was one of the rulers of Kultiras, so that would be an option. On the other hand, it would be kind of awkward to go back into an adventure with Nagas, especially with us already dealing with Queen Azara, us already dealing with Nesoth, so there's very little there to go back to. On the other hand, we could also journey to where the current Hearthstone expansion is going, Murder at Castle Nathria, which takes place in the most recent World of Warcraft expansion, Shadowlands. Shadowlands is this afterlife in World of Warcraft. This is where souls go when people die, although we are still alive when we are moved to Shadowlands in the World of Warcraft storyline. But that's kind of an awkward place for mercenaries, isn't it? Like, going into afterlife and handling those problems. This has very little connection to any of the other things that are happening on Azeroth, to any of the other world. So that's a little bit of an awkward place to go to. So I would actually be a little bit disappointed if Mercenaries chose to go to Shadowlands next, even though Hearthstone itself is right now in Shadowlands. What I would like to see instead would be Hearthstone Mercenaries going to Wrath of the Lich King. Blizzard is going to release Wrath of the Lich King Classic in just a couple of weeks, so the most famous, the most popular expansion to World of Warcraft of all time is coming back. Lich King, Arthas, Northrend, these icy wastes, these frostworms, Undead Scourge, Ulduar with its Titan Guardians, the Troll Nation. There's just a lot of good stuff up in Northrend. Looking at the map of Northrend, what happened in Northrend back in Wrath of the Lich King? We have Dragonblight, for example. In Dragonblight we had Naxxramas. We haven't really explored Naxxramas yet in Mercenaries. There were also some dragons, there were some dragon battles, fights against Malygos, stuff like that going on in the Nexus. Then we had the Ice Crown area, Ice Crown Citadel, the final fight against Lich King. In Storm Peaks, all the Titan Guardians, Old Gods. The huge raid of Ulduar, which is one of the most iconic raids in the game. Then we had the Troll Nation of Zul'Drak, that also a game with a pretty big dungeon. There will be a lot of interesting things here. And the next Hearthstone Mercenaries patch is also going to happen only shortly after the release of Wrath of the Lich King Classic. So I really hope that this is going to be the place that we're going to visit next in Mercenaries. That would be quite epic, and it might even bring some new players to Mercenaries just to see the sights of Ice Crown. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.